Hi, and welcome back to the Forgive Yourself podcast. I am your host, Brenda Reese. Now, today, we are beginning a special 3-part series on self-trust. Now, we're going to talk about how self-trust can help us make clearer decisions and have better conversations. And the end result is being able to come back to ourselves in the moments when we're tempted to overthink, to people please, and abandon what we know is true. Does that sound familiar? Now, this first episode is called You Don't Need More Advice, You Just Need More Self-Trust. And I want to begin here because many of us think that the issue is that we need more information. You know, a lot of my clients and myself, we think if I just knew more, if I could just figure out that right answer, if I could just talk to maybe somebody else, if I could just get one more opinion, if I could just be absolutely sure, then I would know what to do. But often the real issue isn't that we don't have enough information. The real issue is that we don't trust ourselves enough to listen to what we already know. And I'm saying this with understanding and care, because if you struggle with self-trust, please know there's nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're not incapable. You're not failing, because decisions feel hard sometimes. And many times what we call indecision has actually been self-protection. Many times what we call overthinking is actually an attempt to avoid pain or conflict, rejection, disappointment, shame, or the fear of getting it wrong. Anybody else out there about that? That was me. And many times what we call people pleasing is a very old strategy that once helped us feel safe, connected, accepted, or loved. So today is not about judging the part of you that asks everyone else what to do. It's not about criticizing the part of you that wants reassurance. It's not about shaming the part of you that second guesses yourself. Today is just about noticing, because awareness is the first step in rebuilding self-trust. And if you've been with me for a while, you know we can't change something unless we know it's there. So we have to be aware of it. And I also want to say that self-trust is not about suddenly knowing every answer. And self-trust is not about never feeling fear. I think that's part of a big reason for a lot of us is we don't want to feel this fear, or we think that we're not supposed to, but that's not true. And self-trust is not about always being confident. Self-trust is about learning to stay connected to yourself while you find your answer. Now that's a whole different deal. Now, for many of us, when we are making a decision or preparing for a conversation, we don't stay connected to ourselves, right? We go into our head, we go into the future or the past, we go into what everyone else might think. We go into how someone might react, or go into all the ways it could go wrong if you're one of the hypervigilant people like me. We go into trying to be good or agreeable or reasonable or responsible and easy to get along with. And somewhere in the middle, all of that, we lose touch with the quiet voice inside us that says, this matters to me. This doesn't feel right. Oh, I think I need more time. I feel like I want something different. I'm going to trust what I know. I don't want to keep abandoning myself. Now that voice is quiet, but it's there. And self-trust is the practice of learning how to hear it again. So let's talk about decisions for a moment. Now, some decisions are really big. Some decisions need time. Some decisions require thought or support or maybe more information. and they need discernment. Now, a lot of the time, even small decisions can feel heavy when we do not trust ourselves. You might find yourself asking 5 different people what they think. That's me. You might write the email or the text and rewrite it 10 times. Oh my gosh, when I started recording videos, I did retakes, swear, like 20, 25 times because it didn't sound right. It didn't look right. And I would always get other people's thoughts or opinions and I'd change it. It was crazy. And I'd spend an hour on an email or a text rewriting it to make sure that no one could take it wrong. Right? Is that you? Please tell me I'm not alone in this. Also, you might say yes quickly and then resent it later. You might say, let me think about it, but then you spend the whole time spiraling. You might know that something doesn't feel right, but then talk yourself out of that knowing. And sometimes we can find ourselves asking, gosh, am I overreacting? Am I being selfish? Am I making too big of a deal out of this? What if they're upset? What if I regret this? What if I'm wrong? And then what happens is the decision stops being just a decision. It becomes a test of whether you are good enough, a test of whether you are lovable enough, a test of whether you are allowed to have needs, a test of whether you are allowed to disappoint someone, because we are going to do that, a test of whether you are allowed to choose yourself. And this, my friend, is exhausting. Because now you're not only trying to make a decision, right? You're trying to make a decision that keeps everyone comfortable, prevents conflict, protects a relationship, avoids guilt, and guarantees that no one will think poorly of you. Oh, Lord. Oh my God, that's a lot to ask for one decision. No wonder it feels heavy, right? And no wonder we get decision fatigue. Now, here is where I want to offer you something to consider. Sometimes the question is not, what is this perfect decision? Sometimes the question is, can I trust myself enough to take the next honest step? That feels different, right? The perfect decision puts pressure on you. The next honest step brings you back to yourself. And when you're rebuilding self-trust, the next honest step is often more helpful than trying to find the perfect answer, because there isn't one. So why do we ask everyone else? That was my big question. Now, I want to say this, asking for advice is not wrong. There are times when outside support is needed, and it's wise to get outside support, especially when, we don't have expertise in a certain area. There are times when another perspective helps us see something we couldn't see on our own. And there are times when guidance or mentoring, let's go on, coaching, therapy, friendship, or professional expertise can be very powerful and valuable. So I'm not saying never ask for help. What we're talking about today is something totally different. We're talking about those moments when you already have a sense of what feels true, but you keep asking everyone else because you don't trust yourself enough to stand with what you know. We're talking about the pattern of outsourcing your inner authority. Now, what does that sound like? Oh, it can sound like, what do you think I should do? Do you think I'm being unreasonable? Would you be upset if this happened to you? Do you think I should say something? Do you think I should let go? What would you do? Right? There's hesitation, and I'm doing it with that kind of a tone because that's how it feels. Again, there's nothing wrong with getting support. But when we ask from a place of self-abandonment, we're not really looking for support. We're looking for permission. We're looking for permission to feel what we feel, to want what we want, to say no, permission to tell the truth, permission to stop doing what is draining us, permission to choose what we already know we need to choose. Right? I know. I get it. I'm right here. This is why this is important to share, because this is what I'm learning too. Because all of this is where self-trust begins. There is a difference between gathering support and giving away your authority. So support can sound like when we're asking for support, I value your perspective and I'm still listening to myself. When we give away authority, it sounds like, tell me what I'm allowed to know. Support sounds like, can you help me think this through? Giving away your authority sounds like, please decide for me so I don't have to risk disappointing anyone. Yeah, I did that. Support sounds like, I'm open to more insight. Giving away your authority sounds like, I don't trust myself unless someone else agrees. That difference matters. And for many high capacity women, this can be a little surprising because you are very confident in certain areas of your life. You lead, right? You manage, you solve problems. You are the person that people come to for advice. You are capable, responsible, thoughtful, wise, and you're deeply intuitive. And yet, in your personal life, in your relationships, your boundaries, your needs, your desires, your emotional truth, you find yourself second guessing everything. Right? Does that sound familiar? I know this is not to beat yourself up or judge yourself. This does not mean that you are doing anything wrong. I am right here with you. This does not mean you don't lack wisdom. It means you learn to trust your performance more than your inner knowing. You learn to trust what you can do, but not always what you feel. You learn to trust your ability to take care of others, but not always your right to take care of yourself. And that, my friend, is a powerful distinction. Self-trust is not just about believing I can handle things. It's also believing my feelings matter, my needs matter, my truth matters, my timing matters, my body's signals matter. My inner knowing deserves my attention. So how does our self-trust get, I'm going to call it weakened, right? Because we had it and we lost it along the way. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through repeated moments where we learn to doubt, dismiss, or override ourselves. Now, maybe you were told you were too sensitive. Yeah. Maybe you were told you were dramatic. A lot of my clients were told that. Maybe your needs were minimized. That was me. Maybe your feelings were ignored. That was a lot of us. Maybe love felt conditional. Same here. Maybe approval came when you were helpful or easy or successful, quiet or agreeable. Maybe conflict felt unsafe or overwhelming. Maybe you learned that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. I learned to do that growing up. Maybe you became the responsible one, the strong one, the one who could handle it, the one who didn't need much, the one who made things easier for everyone else. And over time, you may have learned to check outside of yourself before checking in with yourself. You may have learned to ask, what do they need? What will they think? How can I make this easier for them? How can I avoid upsetting anyone? How can I be understood? How can I make sure I'm not seen as selfish? Right? You were thinking of those things before You were able to ask yourself, what do I need? What do I feel? Gosh, what is true for me? What am I pretending not to know? And what would I choose if I trusted myself? Now I want to pause here for a second. Take a breath with me. If you recognize yourself in any of this, please do not judge yourself or use it against yourself. This is not another reason to criticize yourself because we do a damn good job about criticizing ourselves. We've learned that, we've been taught that, we've taken it on. And we do not any longer need to do that. This, my friend, is an invitation to understand yourself. Many of these patterns began as protection. If being agreeable kept you connected, of course you learned to be agreeable. If being successful got you recognition, of course you learned to achieve. And if staying quiet reduced conflict, of course you learned to stay quiet. And if taking care of everyone else helped you feel valuable, of course you learned to overgive. Where's my overgivers out there, right? These patterns make sense, right? But now we get to look at whether they're actually working for us anymore. This is where the healing begins. This is where our choice comes in. Not with shame, with awareness. Did you know that you can honor the part of you that learned how to survive, belong, succeed, or keep the peace? And you can also begin choosing a different way. You can honor that part of you. You can choose a different way that includes you. Now, one of the places self-trust gets really tangled is around approval. We got to touch on this one. When we don't trust ourselves, we often confuse peace with approval. We think we feel peaceful once everyone understands, once everyone agrees and no one's upset and we've explained it perfectly, once we have a guarantee that our decision won't disappoint anyone, or when someone says, yep, you're right. That's not always peace. Sometimes that is relief because we avoided discomfort. Sometimes that is relief because we got permission. And sometimes that is relief because we didn't have to stand alone in our truth. I spent so many years feeling that. And again, this is human. You're not alone. And it's not just me, not just you. There's a lot of us. You know, of course we want to be understood. That's one of the human behaviors. Of course we want people to support us. Of course we want our choices to make sense to the people we love. Yet self-trust means we begin to ask, can I honor what I know, even if someone else doesn't understand it? This is not easy. Yet, it is so freeing. If you require everyone's approval before you trust your own decision, your peace will always be in someone else's hands. I'm going to repeat that. If you require everyone else's approval before you trust your own decision, your peace will always be in someone else's hands. And that is a painful way to live. It means someone else's reaction becomes the measure of whether you are worthy. Someone else's opinion becomes the measure of whether your choice is valid. And someone else's disappointment becomes the measure of whether you did something right or wrong. But what if someone's disappointment is not proof that you made the wrong choice? What if someone's confusion is not proof that your truth is unclear? And what if someone's disagreement is not proof that your needs don't matter? What if you can be loving and still choose differently? What if you can be kind and still say no? What if you can care about the relationship and still be honest about what you need? That is where self-trust begins to change everything, because you stop making approval the goal and you begin making alignment the goal, not perfection, alignment. Now that means asking yourself, does this choice honor my truth? Does this choice respect my limits? Does this choice reflect who I am becoming? Does this choice help me stay connected to myself? That's a big one. Those are self-trust questions. Now, this is the Forgive Yourself podcast, so I want to bring forgiveness into this conversation too. Because rebuilding self-trust often asks us to forgive ourselves for the times we didn't listen, to forgive ourselves for staying too long, to forgive ourselves for saying yes when everything inside us was saying no, to forgive ourselves for ignoring those red flags. Yeah, I did that through 3 marriages. Yeah. To forgive ourselves for choosing approval over truth, and to forgive ourselves for abandoning ourselves because we did not yet know how to stay anchored in our truth. And I really want to say this with compassion, because this is what I have been working on, for a long time. And I don't want you to take this lightly, because we hear this. This is really important. And I want you to feel this. You made the choices you knew how to make with the awareness, the tools, the capacity, and the self-trust you had at that time. I really want you to feel this. You made the choices you knew how to make with that awareness, with the tools, with the capacity and self-trust you had at that time. That you made those decisions the best she knew how, and he knew how. Now, it doesn't mean that we didn't have consequences for it, and it doesn't mean it didn't hurt, and it doesn't mean we can't wish that we had chosen differently. It doesn't mean all that. Self-forgiveness doesn't mean that. Self-forgiveness allows you to stop using the past as evidence that you can't trust yourself now. This is big. Self-forgiveness allows you to stop using the past as evidence that you can't trust yourself now. Because sometimes, we find ourselves saying, I can't trust myself because I made that choice before. But what if the more truthful statement is, I made that choice before because I didn't yet know how to fully trust myself like I do now. That is very different. I made that choice before because I didn't know yet how to fully trust myself. You can stop there. Or I didn't yet know how to fully trust myself like I do now. Right? The first statement keeps you stuck in shame. I can't trust myself because I made that choice before. Can't do it. Right? And the other one opens the door to growth. Self-forgiveness says, I can learn from what happened without punishing myself forever. Yeah, because we usually punish ourselves for a little while. Self-forgiveness says, I can take responsibility without attacking myself. Self-forgiveness says, I can understand the pattern and still choose differently now. And self-forgiveness says, I can rebuild trust with myself one honest moment at a time. That is the heart of this work. Because self-trust is not built by never making mistakes. Self-trust is built by how we return to ourselves after we do. So what does self-trust actually sound like? Sometimes it sounds really simple. Most of the time, it sounds really simple. I make things so darn complicated, right? So Self-trust can sound like, I need a little time before I answer. I don't have enough information yet, but I can gather what I need. It can sound like, this doesn't feel aligned. Self-trust says, I don't have to decide from panic. My no is allowed to be enough. Self-trust says, I can change my mind when I have new clarity, right? It's not about never changing our mind. That's just silly. I learned that. Self-trust says, I can listen to advice without abandoning my own knowing. I can disappoint someone and still be a good person. And I can be unsure and still take the next honest step. I love that phrase, the next honest step, because self-trust doesn't always give you the whole staircase. Most of the time, I know I was really frustrated about this for years. I wanted to know. I was so afraid to take the next step without thinking I needed to know everything. I don't know if you're like that at all, but okay. Most of the time, it only gives you this next step, right? The next pause, the next boundary, the next question, the next conversation, the next moment of telling yourself the truth. And that's what counts. Sometimes we think clarity should arrive like a lightning bolt. Oh God, I disappointed myself so much. There's been a lot of learning here. That's why I teach forgiveness. What did they say? You teach what you need to learn? Yeah, I'm right here. Because, most of the time, clarity comes through practice. It comes through listening deeply, through noticing what feels heavy and then what feels honest. It comes through noticing resentment. It comes through noticing relief. It comes through noticing where your body contracts or softens. It comes through noticing when your yes is honest and then when your yes is actually from fear. It comes through noticing when your no is protective, wise, and necessary. Self-trust is not loud. It is quiet, steady, and simple. And many times it doesn't even sound like certainty. It sounds like honesty. So before we close today, I want to give you a simple reflection practice. You know I love those. Now, it's not complicated. Just a few questions to help you notice where you may be seeking advice when you really want to come back home to yourself. You might want to journal on these or maybe just pause and reflect. Okay. So the first question is, where am I asking for advice when I already have a sense of what feels true? Not because advice is wrong, right? A reminder, but because I want you to notice whether you are seeking support or seeking permission. The second question, where am I waiting for someone else to approve of my choice before I allow myself to feel peaceful? This one is very revealing. It was for me. Sometimes we don't realize how much we are waiting for someone else's reaction to tell us whether we're okay. Now, the third question is, where am I calling it confusion when it may actually be fear? Now, this, for me and my clients, have been a very powerful question. Where am I calling it confusion when it might actually be fear? I find that we do this a lot, and I learned this years ago. When we say confused, what we really mean is, I know what I need to do, but I'm afraid of what might happen if I do it. No judgment here, just awareness. And the fourth question is, what would I choose if I trusted myself just 5% more? I love adding just the 5%. Because it makes it feel a little gentler. Because, if you're like me, you're going to go all out. We're going to go big or go home, right? So we're not going to do that. We don't want to leap into this whole, this would be me leaping into this whole new identity overnight, right? No, we're going to begin with 5%. So what would change if you trusted yourself just a little bit more? Would you pause before saying yes? Would you tell the truth to yourself first? Would you stop asking, for the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th opinion? Would you let your no be enough? Would you rest before deciding? Would you admit that something isn't working? Would you stop trying to explain your way into being understood? And would you let yourself want what you want? This is where the practice begins. Not in a huge dramatic moment, in one honest moment. One pause, one breath, one question, one choice to come back home to yourself. Whew, okay. This was a lot. I know. All right. So we're going to do a little recap as we close. Okay. All right. You ready? Now, you don't always need more advice. You don't always need another opinion. And you don't always need to explain it better. You don't always need to be more certain. Sometimes what you need is to rebuild the relationship with yourself so you can stop outsourcing your inner authority. Notice when you are looking for permission. Recognize that approval is not the same as peace, and to forgive yourself for the times you didn't know how to listen. And to begin asking yourself, what do I know? What do I need? What feels true to me? And what is my next honest step? That is self-trust. And self-trust is not built all at once. It is built in these small moments when you choose not to abandon yourself. It is built when you listen inward before reaching outward. It is built when you let yourself be honest, even if the honesty is uncomfortable, and it will be. It is built when you remind yourself, my feelings matter, my needs matter, my truth matters, and I can trust myself enough to take the next honest step. So in the next episode, we're going to go underneath the pattern and look at the 5 hidden needs that often shape our choices. Because once we understand the need under the behavior, we can meet ourselves with compassion so much better instead of judgment. And that is really an important part of rebuilding self-trust. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode spoke to you, I would love it if you'd share it with someone, especially if they need the reminder that they don't need to keep asking everyone else for permission to trust what they already know. And if you'd like to learn more information about my work or my coaching or the resources I offer, please visit my website at BrendaReiss, REISS coaching.com. And until next time, just remember you matter. And you can begin rebuilding self-trust one honest moment at a time. Take care. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.